You are being recorded.
Okay, good evening. Call this meeting of the special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Mike.
Special meeting of Subdivision Regulations Review Subcommittee. It is Monday,
Tonight, it's a subdivision.
June 21st, 7 o'clock.
We could use
It's actually 7:07 p.m. We got Mr. Hill,
Alvin Hill, present.
Mr. Poplawski,
Dave Poplawski, present.
Mr. Lenke is muted but has indicated that he is present, and Joseph Brody Brown. So we will continue with the discussion of the subdivision regulations starting at page 28 of the regulations as currently drafted. Article 4, section 3S.
Okay, so we will proceed as we have proceeded. We'll just read through, stopping for notes. So starting with letter S, street trees. Just right off the bat, and this is kind of a comment for this section in general, I think a lot of things need to be reordered to flow better anyway, in terms of, you know, how you would consider them. But street trees, I specifically think should be after sidewalks because I think they have to do specifically with sidewalks. Small point, nothing we necessarily even really need to discuss.
Right.
So just to read the item, the commission may require that street trees be planted 40 to 50 feet apart on both sides of any street, subject to variations made necessary by driveways, street corners, and walks, and shall be located within 10 feet of the edge of the pavement. I'll read the whole thing and then we'll go back. 1, trees to be planted shall be of 3-inch caliber or larger, shall be planted, protected, and maintained using good horticultural practices, and shall have a minimum height of 10 feet. Such trees shall be guaranteed for 1 season's growth and shall be replaced by the developer if any should die during this period. 2, the species of trees shall be subject to the approval of the commission. 3, where the trees may interfere with utility poles and wires, the commission may permit the location of required trees within the front 10 feet of the proposed lots. 4, existing trees along the proposed stretch which conform to these requirements may be substituted for new trees at the discretion of the commission. 5, where the existing street trees have aged to the point of deteriorating, new street trees shall be planted in between the existing trees, and it may be required to trim the existing trees to permit growth of the new trees. All right, so I'll toss my comments in, and then you guys toss your comments in and let me know what you think. First of all, again, right off the bat, I love the principle of street trees. In about 75% of the town of Thompson, I think they are irrelevant because we've got a lot of woodlot cover. And this is part of the reason I think it should follow sidewalks, because I think they become relevant where sidewalks are in play. And then I would stipulate here that street tree planting shall be species native to the region, which we did consistently add in places in the zoning regulations where plantings were required. What were you going to say, John Lenke?
On number 4, when you were reading it should be existing trees along the proposed street, not stretch.
Oh, did I say stretch?
Yes, you did.
It says street. It says street.
Just making sure.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not trying to be a teacher here, but you know.
Yeah, Tira, it was item 2 was, you know, your note on item 2 is what I thought was my note as I was coming into this. You know, I think your point about the order is well taken, and yeah, I welcome other people's thoughts about Tira's first note about you is this only applicable in certain districts? Is there some way we want to parse that out for people?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lanky?
uh, my suggestion, I'll go along with the chair on that, that we just flip-flop S and T, because that does make a lot of sense. I mean, why should we have trees go someplace where it's not applicable? We do have a lot of trees along roads here, but wherever there's, sidewalks going in, you need the sidewalks so you can place the trees correctly, instead of just putting a tree and then try to put a sidewalk in. So I would say, my suggestion is we reverse S and T.
Excellent.
Easy peasy. Dave, you look like you are thinking about something to say over there.
I've got, yeah, I agree that in your the second note, I guess, the density in districts, subdivisions with sidewalks are part of the plan. I agree with that. I think that they are, where the sidewalks come into contact. I know in Worcester, and I guess going to your second note, the species, I've done a lot of work in Worcester, and they have a specific tree, and I just tried looking it up. I can't find what it is, but the roots actually grow down, and they do not
Spread out.
Instead of out. And it's a special tree. I can get the name of the tree.
I'll bet you I know what it is. I'll bet you they're plane trees, which is another word for a species of sycamore. They plant them in cities a lot. If you walk down Memorial Drive in Cambridge, it's those trees.
Yeah.
They live a long time. They tolerate congestion and traffic exhaust, and they're non-destructive to sidewalks.
Yeah,
and non-invasive as far as I'm aware.
They only need a tree. I think correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but from my recollection, they only need like a 3x3 square for where they plant them. So because it still gives them enough, because they don't grow too big in diameter. I think the most they'll grow is something like 16 inches tops or something like that.
Yeah. They give a nice canopy, but in the they're specially designed. The root ball doesn't protrude.
Yep.
Horizontally.
Yeah.
I would say that would be a tree that I think would, again, like Dave just said, I think that's something that a tree that we should maybe be a little bit more specific to, so that that's the tree that we would recommend for him to be using.
Well, I can add to those stipulations that they must be tap rooted instead of spread rooting.
Right.
Because it's the spread rooting ones. Oh, somebody's trying to come in, I think.
Well, back in the day, when I say back in the day, they used to plant an oak tree, but an oak tree spreads out, and that's why sidewalks were cracking and breaking, repairing them. So until somebody come up with this tree. No, I think that would be the good way to go.
Okay, good. We agree on some things. I like that. As I was reading this one aloud, number 5, where the existing trees have aged to the point of deteriorating, new street trees shall be planted in between the existing trees, and it may be required to trim the existing trees to permit growth of the new trees. I find this kind of odd.
Usually they cut the old one out, and then they, again, correct me, Dave has done this more than me. I've seen it done. They used to bring in a grinder, but it's an auger, and they would grind out the old one.
Yeah, no, I don't question how it would be done. What I find odd about it is that, and maybe I'm just reading this wrong, does this read to you guys like if the trees that get planted die, that later the developer has to come back? Or am I reading that more complexly than it's intended?
Yeah, it should point out where the liability lies, not with the contractor.
Yeah, I'm reading as existing trees that, maybe like down in the Mill District where the trees were around the sidewalks and, not even a Mill District, because you wouldn't be, well, I guess you could. I mean, if there's street trees,
You're talking along Main Street.
I mean,
and
it just seems to me like subdivisions are going into places where there are, I mean, this is all dealing with streets, right? Where there are few to little, like they're cutting new access paths.
Mhm.
They're putting in new sidewalks. How can there be existing trees there? But maybe there are cases, and I'm just being too literal.
So I think like I read 5 as a continuation of 4. Like I almost don't think it needs to be separated. So that if there are existing trees, those might be okay. But if those trees are not healthy, then the commission may ask them to replace them with new trees.
And who's gonna pay for it?
There's the question. That would be if that's on sidewalks there, and it'd be like if you're in the city, it becomes down, it goes back to the city.
what, when up in Donovan Estates, did Jason have to plant trees up there on the sidewalks, or were they existing trees that he left? I'm not.
No, he didn't. There weren't any existing trees he left. He cleared back. So there is no trees along the sidewalk. I think I don't think he's planting any trees into the
No,
sidewalk.
I think he is planting some trees. I think
Yeah.
that came up at a meeting.
Yeah, I think
Well,
so.
But they're
And it
not
was-
gonna be with the sidewalk, because then it's gonna be behind the side, just behind the sidewalk. Because I was
Yeah,
up there.
that's what I remember, is that we discussed them, and then for whatever reason, they weren't going in the sidewalk profile. They were going right on the edge of the homeowner property.
Correct.
That's
Right.
Yeah.
So that becomes, guess where? That's homeowner's property. If it's gonna be planted
And-
there.
And that was the
Yeah, it
debate.
becomes their responsibility.
We didn't want to have to take care of the trees if they were planted in the sidewalk belt, that area between the sidewalk and the street sidewalk belt, then the town was liable to take care of them. I think that was the discussion. So we
Yeah, but it's,
wanted to plant them
you're
behind.
right. You're right, Dave, but I don't think that it's wide enough to plant a tree between the curb of the the road and, and the sidewalk. They're gonna have that little piece of land, loam or grass there. I don't think would be wide enough. Maybe you'd be lucky if it's 2 feet.
Just
That's called a health strip, by the way, in case you were wondering.
Thank
That
you.
bit of grass is officially called a health strip.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Just a point of order, Tira. I know you let him in, but as you're taking notes as well, if you'll update the members present to note Mr. Krogel's presence.
Yes, in fact, now that you mention that, I have to handwrite this one note into my book.
Hello.
Ellen,
Yes, sir. How's it
Dave.
going, Mike?
All right.
Joe, Mike. Okay.
So the only reason
Okay.
I bring that up, was there a point of him having to plant those trees? Is there, and maybe I just missed it, but is there somewhere that, was it on his permit that he was required to plant trees, or was he just doing it out of the kindness of his heart?
Or is it because
Well,
the
according
regulations
to the
require it?
existing, yeah. I mean, these are the existing subdivision regulations. Street trees are required.
Okay.
Now, there are plenty of good reasons to require street trees in dense development. They add property value, they add, valuable shade, they reduce heat island effect. There's lots of good reasons. But that's why I have this note up here. 75% of Thompson's residential areas are pretty thickly tree covered, or at least pretty thickly vegetated. So this becomes less relevant. And also, a street tree without a sidewalk is just a strike hazard, really. But I do think we should look at the reasons when we do require them And I would say that in subdivisions where sidewalks are required, and that's one of the reasons that I think it needs to come after here. So maybe we can jump ahead to that, because the subject of sidewalk waivers, as you know, drives me batty. But I think there are reasons when they can be used as a negotiating times and places when they can use as a negotiating tool. But so let's jump ahead, and then maybe we'll come back to street trees.
Go ahead, Al.
I'd like to mention on the street trees where it reads street corners and walks. I would like to see a period there, not a comma, and then putting in a new sentence: trees shall not obstruct sight lines at exits when at full growth. Then continue, street trees shall be located within 10 feet of the edge of the pavement. But I just like.
Oh yeah, that was on the note you sent me this afternoon, but say it again, Alvin, and I'll just add it in here right now.
Okay, in other words, corners and walks, period, not comma.
Yep.
Next sentence, trees shall not obstruct sight lines at exits when at full growth.
Okay, so I've got that in the marginal note too. All right. I've got it captured.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so let's go down to and start looking at sidewalks here. And again, I'll read the whole thing and then we'll go back. Sidewalks of not less than 4 feet in width shall be constructed along one or both sides of the street as determined by the commission. The alignment of sidewalks in relation to the roadway sideline shall be as determined by the commission. Sidewalks shall be located within the public sidewalk easements and shall be designated with due attention to pedestrian safety, although I actually think designed is a better word here. Sufficient snow shelf and preservation of street trees. Walks shall be pitched 1/4 inch to the foot from exterior line of right-of-way to edge of road pavement or to the top of the curb, whichever is appropriate, and constructed in accordance with the Town of Thompson roadway ordinance and these regulations. The thickness of concrete shall be 5 inches for all types of sidewalk. I'm just going to make a general note. Run on sentence, break up more for better clarity. Handicapped ramps. Curb cuts shall be provided at all pedestrian crosswalks to provide access for the safe and convenient movement of physically handicapped persons. Such curb cuts shall conform to the most current state statutes and the Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility guidelines. Waiver. The commission may waive the sidewalk installation in whole or in part. In making this determination, it shall consider, among others, each of the following factors as furnished by the developer. Dwelling unit densities in the subdivision and per the Plan of Conservation and Development, present and projected pedestrian traffic, present and projected traffic volumes, proximity of existing sidewalks, safety including sightlines, traffic speed, and topography, classification of public streets, location and frequency of school bus stops, unusual topographic conditions making installation impracticable, or impractical if you wanted to speak plainly. Alvin did send me some notes today, which I didn't have time to feather in, but I believe he and I both are in agreement that we need to seriously consider limiting the conditions under which we're waiving.
And then go out there and do all that, yeah.
Yeah.
Tara, can I just go back to the number one? I know that.
Yep.
And I'm going back to Donovan. I want to say that Rich was okay with not with asphalt or the concrete. I think Jason had come back in. I know we
That is
prefer
true.
concrete, but I think his concern was if it's going to be a town accepted street, asphalt, if done properly, would be easier to maintain than the concrete for restoration.
Yep, that is exactly the case.
We're talking about sidewalks, road.
That's what we changed that. When he came in, he asked to go from concrete to asphalt, but we made a recommendation that he had to put at least a good, I think it was like a good 6-inch bed, process. And then he had to go 2-inch base, 2-inch finish.
Yeah. But I think Rich had wrote a letter and was okay with the transition from concrete to asphalt because it was going to be a town street.
Yeah, because if you think about it, it's easier to rip up a whole asphalt sidewalk and put a new layer, as long as the base is good. If you got a good 6-inch base, it wouldn't take much to straighten it out, great, soften it up and re-roll it. And then, because I did that when I worked for Sepatelli Construction up in Mason Road Extension, when he was doing a subdivision up there. That's what we did for the base, and we did for the process, and then we did 2-inch base and 2-inch finish. And it's easier to rip out 100 feet of asphalt than it is to try to do patchwork. It costs you more to do patch on concrete than it is to rip out asphalt and put it back down.
Yeah.
So here's the note that I just
Yeah.
typed in, and let me know if this makes sense to you guys. Concrete or asphalt, okay, that's an open question. Possibly delineate conditions when one is a better choice than the other, possibly based on average daily traffic on the proposed road. Now, for example, again, to use a real world example, as you know, we're having the sidewalks redone on Route 12. Asphalt sidewalks would not be acceptable there.
No.
The durability has to be higher because of the frequency of the traffic traveling along it at speed. The granite curbs are more durable, and also the daily frequency of use. So to your point, Dave, yeah, the commission approved that based on, trying to find an acceptable solution for the developers mounting costs, but also, as John correctly points out, because Rich said he would rather service asphalt than concrete later, as long as it's properly laid. So I think those are all reasonable factors. So maybe that's something for me to follow up with Rich, like what's the threshold?
Yeah.
Well, Dave knows as well as I do that if it's done properly right up front, asphalt, if it's properly maintained, like in the winter, you don't put too much salt down on it or whatever. But the thing is, it could last 10 years if it's done right the first time, not just put in a 2-inch base of dirt, grat process, and then put an inch and a half. I'll guarantee you within 3 years, the thing will be like going surfing on it.
Like a washboard.
Yeah. But if it's done, the dirt base for processed gravel is the key to the whole thing. That's it right there.
Or whether it's concrete or asphalt, the base is required.
Yes, but the base is still the key, even with concrete. Because concrete, if it's on a weak base, a 2-inch dirt base, as a process, it will start cracking over time too, because the ground moves. Cold, heat. Cold.
I would like to make a statement about asphalt. If I had a child that was 4 years old, I would not want to walk that child on asphalt in the summer. It's not.
That is an excellent point.
You Dan,
well, we'll call that related to heat island effect because it is similar.
Mhm.
That's a good point, Alvin.
the other point I would like to make, anytime we use the word concrete, there should be a strong adjective with it. Adjective. Durable concrete. That's going to scare any contractor to hell, believe me. When you say durability, because they're going to come in and say, well, we're going to use 3,500. It isn't pound per PSI that counts. It's durability. And the science of concrete today is really evolving. It's almost remarkable.
You're right, Alvin. It's, they put that fiber in the concrete. Now you don't even have to use rebar in it anymore like they used to,
Durability, very important.
but it's costly. It's a very expensive piece of concrete.
Well, tough. We want to,
Just saying, you're not looking at $100 yard stuff. You're looking at close to 200. But I'm just giving you, this is something we have to look at down the road.
Yep.
With the contract, is he willing to do this? This is what it's going to be. But again, to me, the base, the dirt, the gravel process is the key as well, more than anything, as far as I'm concerned.
Joe, you were about to say something, I thought.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I mean, we want sidewalks that are gonna last, right? I think
If we can get 10 years out of a sidewalk, concrete or asphalt, you're doing good, especially in New England.
So what I personally, was that you, Dave, or was that Mike? I couldn't tell.
It was Mike. I know
What did you want to?
where I grew up in Dudley, those same asphalt sidewalks are still in place. I mean, they have some cracks, but overall, they're better than the roads in town. I don't know what's underneath there, but they sure have held up.
It's the base, Mike.
About 50 years ago. Well, 60 years ago. But
Are you talking Mason Road in that?
no, I'm talking down in Jericho on Green Street and Pine Street. Well, basically.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I know what you're talking. Yep.
55, 60 years for sure. Because they were done when I was 4, 5, 6 years old.
So in
you
terms
were
of the material, it sounds like we generally agree that there is room to allow for both concrete and asphalt if correctly applied. Another thing that Alvin dropped off to me, and it was a graphic document, so I can't really call it up here, but was a set of standards for sidewalks. What manual did you pull that from, Alvin?
that's the state of Connecticut.
So that's the state guidelines.
Correct.
So including something like that as an appendix, again, much like the standards for street construction, which we opted to include as an appendix because it's based on federal or state guidelines, which could change, allows for the specificity without us having to write it.
Exactly. But the standard plan from the state, I would defer to our highway foreman, have him look at this, and if he agrees that this should be one of our guidelines, then have that standard plan, and there's a number with it, which could be part of our appendix.
yeah.
I agree with Mr. Hill 110%.
Okay, I think I captured that. So now for me, actually the key piece of the whole section on sidewalks is here in the waivers. I will read my original note, and this goes back months. It hasn't much changed. The way it's currently written is poorly articulated. It doesn't really say under what standards any of these things will permit a waiver. It just says that under some standard of pedestrian traffic, there could be a waiver, or, under some dwelling unit density. There's no level to which you can genuinely refer. It's entirely subjective as written. My recommendation is that no waivers should be permitted in the denser districts or the districts served by water and sewer where we're trying to drive density. So that's the Downtown Mill Rehabilitation District, the Common Residential District, and the Thompson Corridor Development District. And no waivers for sidewalks if the developer is proposing that we accept the street. So if we want to do this with a series of carrots and sticks, if somebody is proposing a private road, a private access way in a subdivision in the rural residential agricultural district, and they want, that's a way they can save costs, is they can ask for the sidewalk waiver. That doesn't mean, I don't think that means that we give them one every time either, by the way. I think that we still need to articulate the standards under which they apply. Like maybe that standard is for fewer than 10 lots, for, you know, an access way that connects to nothing, right? Where are the sidewalks? What are the sidewalks going to connect to? Now, the problem with the latter is one that I've said all along. The more waivers you allow, the more often the sidewalks are not going. There's not going to be any other sidewalks to connect to. But at the same time, when somebody comes with a 4-lot subdivision and it connects to a dirt road, you know, maybe they don't need those there, right? So it's a way to me anyway, and you guys discuss this now, to incentivize people to take responsibility for the maintenance of the roads and the creation of the homeowners association by trading off upfront costs in construction by allowing them to ask for sidewalk waivers. Discuss. Dave, I see you smiling.
I like it. I think that's a great summary of a direction that I think works. I agree with you that there's areas that current sidewalks are there and we don't want to steer away from those, you know, the Mill District, the downtown areas to, you know, let someone skate by without having to put those sidewalks in. But in the same token, I agree with you on the other end of the RRAD that it's a compromise. So I agree with all your thoughts, Tira.
I love it when people agree with all my thoughts.
And you know, I'm sometimes a hard candidate to get. That's why I was
Now, having
smiling.
said, I know, I could tell. So having said all that, I do think that still leaves the burden on either entirely on us or on us with Rich. But I think in most of these cases, actually on us or on you guys, really, since you're the voting members, for what are the standards under which in the RRAD, if you are below this threshold, it's okay to ask for the waiver. Dwelling unit densities. What dwelling unit density? Present and projected pedestrian. I would actually stay away from these two, present and projected pedestrian traffic, because this is entirely like projected pedestrian traffic. Well, if you propose no sidewalks, of course you're not going to get any pedestrian traffic.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's just, to me, this is useless.
Both of those, B and C.
This is slightly more useful, but not much more.
No.
Well,
I'm
I think,
also not crazy about this one, but I think it's fair game in some cases.
Right.
Yeah, I think for C, traffic should always be considered automobile traffic because you never know what's gonna come in down the pike. My cousin.
So yeah, so let's unstrike this.
But how would you, and I get that too, but how would you project traffic volumes when they're coming in for a waiver?
I'm thinking about it right now. Average daily traffic on intersecting streets.
Well, that's, yeah, present. Yeah, present, just the projected, I guess I have a problem with.
Right. Yeah, and I that makes sense to me, Dave.
Yeah, well, I agree about the projected because if you can project whatever you want.
Right.
So how about that? Average daily traffic on existing intersecting streets.
I like it.
Okay. Proximity of existing sidewalks. We have allowed people to use that in the past, although, again, the more waivers we give, the fewer sidewalks will be proximate.
Right.
This is the level I really want to set, which is what is the dwelling unit density? How many proposed lots can you skate by without sidewalks? Is it 10? Is it 6? Is it 8? Is it 14?
5.
Yeah, I'm thinking 6 or less because after that, you're getting a distance in there.
Well, let me think here. Give me a second. I'm going to stop this share. I want to go back to the POCD because I believe that my density formula for how many houses per road mile is articulated in there. And that might be a logical point. Talk amongst yourselves while I look for this, guys.
I'm gonna guess Thompson's about 21 homes per mile.
Are we throwing it in a pool? Anyone else have a?
Come on, Alvin.
I'm
Where did
gonna find it in a second.
Did
Where
Dave
did you
set
pull
the
that
over
one
under?
out, Dave?
Alvin probably
Okay.
knows.
No, I found it. I'm gonna just share this now for a minute.
Were you doing your GPS and everything, Dave, and crystal ball?
Built a lot of fiber
Okay.
per mile.
Using the hypothetical of a 1 mile stretch of road with the current minimum allowable frontage of 150 feet, a maximum of 70 homes could be located on that road, 35 per side. If that mile of road, so a 1 mile stretch of road can have 35 houses per side with 150-foot minimum frontage. So it's more than I thought, actually. What is true is that the actual density in Thompson is wicked low. It's goofy low, and that I think is around 20.
Current. Yeah, it's probably 2021 current.
That I think is in the. I know where it is in here. Let's find it. That is in the discussion of housing.
So just to state, I mean, if we say we lowered it, say we put a density of 6 homes, would we limit the sidewalks to one side, or would you put sidewalks up both sides then, if it was 6 homes?
That's an interesting question. I just want to find this fact so I could get it in my head before we. I know it's in here. Density.
I just saw it, 19 parcels. Go back down right there.
There we go.
19 parcels.
In 2020, residential density is at roughly 19 parcels per road mile, and that's across the town, right?
Oh,
So
it's
that's
close.
the average of stuff in the
Oh.
current mill district and stuff out in the hinterlands.
All right.
So
Mr.
we're-
Chair. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was it. All right. So
Give Dave Pope Dave there an 8 for what he just came up with, 21.
Yeah,
You were close, Bubba.
I went over.
that's right. Price is right
What,
rules don't count
Like
here.
2? The teacher will give you a gold star for that.
That's right.
So, okay, repeat the question. If there's 6 houses and that's the threshold,
Would we require sidewalks on both sides of the street?
Yes,
Or would we limit them?
are
Yes,
the houses on both sides of the street?
yes,
So 3 houses per side of the street, or 2 and 4, or 1 and 5, or whatever.
yeah, I'm just throwing it out there. I didn't. I'm
Yeah, well, that's
impartial.
why, that's why we're discussing the hypotheticals. So if we like the number 6, for whatever reason, if we like the number 6, is it 6 houses per side of the street that is the threshold? In other words, if you have a 6-lot subdivision, but it's 3 houses, and we'll just use nice even numbers, 3 houses per side of the street, does that subdivision need that sidewalk in the RRAD? Right, they don't get a pass if they're in the DMRD or the CRC, or the CRD or the TCDD, just in the RRAD. Or do we say it's per side of the street?
Well, I think in our rural district, if we have 6-lot development, most likely it's not going to be horseshoe shape. It's going to be the full length of the existing road. And then we probably wouldn't require a sidewalk because they're on a busy road.
We already waived that a few times already in the past few years,
Right. 'Cause
because it didn't deem necessary to have them put a sidewalk in it because of the way the road is, you know. Yeah, that becomes a catch-22 again. We had a couple developers, a couple people that are putting in, so like, I think on Capitolic Road. They're putting in there, they're gonna put in 3 houses, we waived the sidewalk and stuff,
Mhm.
because it didn't deem necessary to have sidewalk there. You know, I think it all depends on comes down to location.
Let me think this through again, though. Let me think about this another way. You know what? I'm kind of inclined. Six houses or less. What I want to avoid here, and what's just occurred to me, is that a pesky developer could propose a bunch of 6-house intersecting streets in a subdivision and use that to get the town to accept the streets with no sidewalks. So maybe it is density level set to 6 houses or less, period. I'm trying to think through like the potential pitfalls here.
Right.
Like, I don't think anybody cared when that guy for Jezersky Lane or whatever it was came and wanted to have 3 houses and there was no sidewalks because it was all members of his family. And really, that should never have been a street. It should have been a shared driveway all along, but whatever, we didn't have them there. Nobody cared that he didn't have sidewalks. They would have been sidewalks to nowhere and for no one. But what's the way that we incentivize the developer to keep the street under private maintenance, allowing the waiver of sidewalks? I want to make sure I'm working out this logic problem correctly. Help me out here, Joe.
Right.
I know you're on summer vacation, but
So right, that's an either or, right? We either want shared driveways or private access roads or whatever we call them, or we want roads with sidewalks that promote walkability, right?
yeah, right. So let me see here. What have we proposed? Let me go back to the note. What are we proposing? No waivers for sidewalks in the DMRD, CRC, and TCDD. Okay, that's fine. We can set that aside. No waivers for sidewalks where new town roads are being proposed. Okay, if they want us to accept the road, they have to put in a sidewalk no matter the size of the development. No waiver for density. Okay, I think I just solved it.
Right, yeah.
So then the density level of 6 houses or less to waive sidewalks, private road in a development with private roads. In the RAD or Lake District. So now let's go back to, is 6 houses the right level there if we're telling these people they're maintaining them themselves? Is that too stringent, or is that Goldilocks and the 3 bears just right? So this waiver is only being permitted for somebody proposing a privately maintained right-of-way. At some point, it doesn't matter whether it's private or not, they're going to have enough house lots on there that we're going to say, no, you still have to put sidewalks in because there's so many houses in here. Now it's a neighborhood that needs to be walkable. So where's the level?
I've got an idea here, Tibra.
Tell me.
Perpendicular driveways. A perpendicular driveway to the main road would not require, say you had even 7 or 10, if they're on a, every one of those driveways were perpendicular to the town road. Why have it? We've done it before. Why have a sidewalk?
Good point.
Perpendicular driveways.
Well, according to our driveway requirements, we always have a preference for perpendicular driveways, right? Right angles to the street. So let's assume for a second that we live in a flat Midwestern development, which obviously we don't, but it makes the visualization a little easier. And everything is gridded and everybody's driveways are in fact perpendicular, but they still come out onto a street. And if you are walking down that street, at some point that street becomes unwalkable because it's so long that it becomes unsafe to be a pedestrian on it for any length of time. So, you know, how long does that street have to be, or how many houses are located on that street to make it dense enough that we don't care if you're maintaining it yourself, we still take, you have a responsibility to the people buying properties here to put in safe pedestrian access. So I don't think that and maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think that the configuration of the driveway is the controlling factor there.
Now, if you had a cul-de-sac, could be all perpendicular driveway. But then
Right.
you're not going to have a cul-de-sac with 6 homes.
If I may,
You may.
thank you. The purpose of mostly subdivisions nowadays is to make a neighborhood, because individual, 3 or 4 house lots is not viably economical anymore. So you're building a community or a little neighborhood or whatever, and you want that to be safe, and the neighbors are going to walk from each other's houses. So I think you need a sidewalk, anything over 6 houses.
I like your reasoning. I mean, I agree that subdivisions, well done subdivisions, create real neighborhoods. They don't just create blobby cul-de-sacs everywhere that just, you know, cut into the open space. They create livable, walkable communities that are interconnected. I'm willing to accept that rationale. If anybody else would like to advance something else.
Yeah, I'm okay with saying, I could be convinced that it should be a little bit higher, but I'm not strongly opposed to 6.
Okay.
What do you feel your number would be, Joe?
I mean, my gut would be 10, but like I said, I don't feel strongly enough about it to fight against 6. And I think Mike articulated it very nicely.
Well, what if we compromise at 8? No, when you're saying to talk 4 houses on the side, you're talking 600 feet up the road. That's a distance.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Alvin said 5 or 6 originally. You know,
Yeah, he did. He did.
I said 5.
I think 6 is. I'm very happy with 6.
Done.
No argument there.
Okay, I think we can take G out, because how can you know the location and frequency of school bus stops to streets that don't exist?
Hypothetical children.
I know. Yeah, yes, that's right. And also to children who don't exist.
Just figure every house stop, it's going to be a stop anyways.
Tara, I'm joining on my computer now because the updates are finished, so you might see me come back in.
Go, okay. All right, well, I get a notifier when somebody's waiting to come in. So if you drop off and come in, I'll see it.
Okay. I'll wait till I'm in before I drop.
I just admitted you.
Because back in the day, like Mike says, you know, pretty much the buses, they stop at one house, then they go up another house or 2 houses, pick up. It's not like back in the day, our day, we all, like on Alice Drive and Watson Road, we all met at one place. And there were 6 houses on Alice Drive and a couple here on Watson Road. There weren't 12 of us. We all met in one spot, and that's where the bus stopped and picked us all up, not going down the street every other house or something, you know?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I'm pretty happy with this commentary to correct this. Does anybody else have anything they want to add, correct,
Well,
toss out there?
we're gonna go with the chair's inclination. We'll go with 6. Bing, done.
And I'll just say too, Tira, you made fun of impracticable, but I think it is different than impractical, and I think it's the right word here.
Do you?
I do.
Well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
You're
Yes,
talking to the
fine,
teacher.
Mr. Linguist.
Thank
I'll
God
wrestle
for
Joe
that.
on linguistics any day. That would be an epic battle.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else have anything else here?
So then
Look at that.
did you want us to then go back to street trees or?
Well, yeah, okay. Let's go just take a quick look at it and in context now. Although I think we did really resolve.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you're saying within 10 feet of, where the heck was that?
10
Planting
feet
the
of the edge of the pavement.
of the edge of the pavement, should it be outside of the 10 feet? Because the roots are going to come in no matter where you are. So if you're saying within 10 feet, that means you're gonna be as close as 10 feet to the sidewalk. Should it be a little bit further away, like a minimum of 8 feet or 10 feet away from the sidewalk? Or the pavement?
That is an interesting question.
We have seen what roots have done to the sidewalks.
Well, if this stipulation for taprooted native species is followed, then you're not getting spreading, right? Because a taproot it's like a carrot, right? It goes straight down and it just has little capillary roots. It's the spreaders that mainly disrupt pavement. It's also the spreaders that are more vulnerable to falling over in wind, particularly if you have a lot of high rain events, which are also accompanied by wind. The soil gets loose, and the network, although wide, is shallow. Those trees are vulnerable to coming over. Taprooted trees just keep drilling down, so they are sort of more kind of like a fence post. They're more stabilized.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but a pine tree is a natural native.
But it's a spreader.
Yeah.
Gonna
It's
want
also
to
soft.
on Main Street? I don't think so, unless you want to put Christmas tree lights on it every year.
I'm just saying. But
Well,
we're not.
You could
we're not-
have
we're
You
not
could
just-
have short. There are some evergreen species that probably wouldn't be too damaging, like small spruces or what. Speaking of Christmas trees,
They spread.
but white pines are huge, and they have huge root systems.
Well, this past year, within the last maybe, and Dave probably could, I don't know if you ever been through Southbridge in the last 2 years where they were repairing the sidewalks for where they had the trees.
Mm.
There's a telltale sign right there, and those are like the spreaders, back in the day. Nobody never thought, 10, 15 years you're going to be replacing a sidewalk because the root system spreads out, and they went through it. They were repairing the sidewalks.
Yeah.
In the last year and a half, I believe, if I remember, because I used to go through there every day when I was working, but still, I tell you,
To your point, though, Mike.
That was costly.
To your point, though, the more I look at this, the less sense it actually makes. You're right. Within 10 feet of the edge of the pavement, I mean, what does that mean? You've got an 11-foot wide sidewalk? You don't. So a typical arrangement for a street tree on a sidewalk is that you have that hell strip between the sidewalk and the street, sometimes also between the sidewalk and private properties, but typically the sidewalk and the street, and that's where street tree plantings are. That's no 10 feet from the edge of the pavement.
No.
So maybe what this needs to be, let's try this. Review, add note.
Because I'm not thinking too much about the street, the sidewalks. Those are the first things that are gonna go.
Yeah. Trees shall be planted within a buffer strip between
Herb?
Street trees should be planted within a buffer street between the sidewalk and the paved right-of-way. Does that make sense? Or what did you say, between the sidewalk and the curb?
I'm thinking between the sidewalk and the house.
Yeah, that's where Rich said that he wanted him in Donovan. That's what I was saying before. He wanted him on the private property side, back side of the sidewalk.
Not to have it in the.
That's so that he could shift the burden of maintenance to the property owner.
That's right.
Correct.
Yep.
But is that the standard we want to adopt for the whole town?
Yes.
That
I'm
would,
sorry. That's my opinion.
that would be a good idea, because that, because if we stick with what we've got, it's gonna be costly to the whole town, all the taxpayers. If
Yeah.
What if
me
you-
personally, I
Trees,
wouldn't even want a tree next to a sidewalk in front of my house. The less the better, unless it's more than 200 feet away, I'm okay with that, but
What if you set a minimum of 15 feet setback off the boundary line?
that's still putting it on the homeowner.
You are
What's-
putting it on a homeowner, but you're putting it further away from the sidewalk.
Yeah, but we're gonna specify which trees they can even plant, right? I mean,
That's
that's
right.
part of
Right.
it.
Right.
So we're not gonna let
I
them
mean-
plant those pine trees. We're gonna let them plant the carrot trees like Tira said. That's all they can plant is the root trees or,
Okay, that's fine and well then. But that is for the.
But that doesn't,
What
yeah,
happens-
that doesn't deal with Rich's issue.
Yeah,
So-
but it shouldn't interfere with the sidewalk, because if the root system is like a carrot goes down, they're only gonna grow so high. If the root system is what, 10 feet down in the ground, the tree's only gonna be what, 20 feet high, 25 feet high? I think they're limited on the height too. They're how do you wanna call it? The way they're grown or
Yeah,
engineered, that they can only be so high and, and spread out only maybe 15 feet wide for the shade, when you're sitting down on Main Street or something, you're sitting underneath a tree that spreads out 15 feet from the trunk, that's, but it won't exceed that, so you can use that type of species of a tree. We can specify that. That's what we feel is the best way to go. And it wouldn't be as costly. The whole key is cost. What it's gonna cost us down the road.
right, because doesn't the root
Would-
system equal
would you-
the tree crown? More or less?
What'd you say, Mike?
Doesn't the root system of a tree usually not go out any further than what the crown of the tree does?
That's one of those sort of general rules of thumb, the canopy, as above, so below.
Right.
That gets a little different with those taprooted trees because they're not spreaders, although you can have the capillary root systems that expand out. They're not those big
But at
honking
the
roots
most, they
that
would not.
heave
go
the,
past-
yeah. Yeah,
But they're limited to height and spread, Michael,
Yes.
yeah, and I feel certain that there are exceptions to that rule all over the place, but
The root system would not be 15 feet per side, in theory.
I'm a little bit of a botany nerd, so I kind of don't mind putting a list of acceptable tree species in the appendix.
Very good. Okay, I'm game.
yeah, that makes sense,
Great. And so the only reason I had suggested going back to this is because I think, Tara, you had alluded to district wise, right? Like making it line up with our sidewalk districts.
Right, yes, good point, Joe. So,
Should it matter?
so I think that's as simple as this, where sidewalks are required. The commission may require that street trees be planted, and then that just moves it down.
Yeah.
And you may still make that waiver in the Lake District or the RRAD based on existing tree cover and the rest, you know, how it fits in with the rest of the proposed subdivision. But you may also waive it based on that, as opposed to, again, back here in the DMRD, CRC, TCDD, if you're not waiving sidewalks, for the same reasons, don't waive the street trees. They increase safety and shade and property values and all those good things. Apparently, the boost in property values by leaving street trees is ridiculously high. I mean, ridiculously high in terms of what you might expect. Like you might expect it to be, you know, adding $1,000 or something, but it's like 10% if you have a neighborhood with street trees, and it's a significant boost. Okay, are we good here?
Underground utility lines.
And there were no comments here, but we'll just read through it quickly to make sure we don't have anything that occurs to us. Oh, Alvin did have a comment, I think, which we'll add in here. So remind me when I get to it, Alvin. Wherever possible, such underground utilities shall not be located under the street pavement.
And that's
New
where,
electric,
and that's where I struck out wherever possible, such. I mean, that is just, I'd rather have it underground utilities shall not be located under town street pavement. Period.
boom.
There's no possible way to do that, though.
Well, if you have a pole on one side, you put a pole on the developed side, and then you go underground to the residents.
Oh, maybe I'm looking at it different then. If it's a underground utility line, I mean,
Shall
look at any
not be located-
subdivision, any
In other words,
subdivision.
we don't want to dig up a town road just to put utilities in to a development on the other side of the road.
Okay.
If
I
you,
thought it was meant anywhere on the street plan. I mean, because they cross the roads all the time.
Right. So yeah, I understand your confusion, Dave. Right. So this is talking about existing roads, right? They can lay the underground utilities before they do the roads in the subdivision, right? Is that what?
that's usually preferred.
Well,
Right,
yeah,
but the way I'm reading it as we're suggesting it be written, it makes it sound like they can't do that. Right, like no utility can pass under any street
yeah, exactly. That's how I read it.
is how it read.
Wherever possible. I mean, it's really not possible. My input to that was there should be a sleeve. All underground utilities should have a sleeve if they pass under the pavement. It should not there be direct bury. Should be a sleeve underneath the asphalt so that it doesn't have to get dug back up if a cable needs to be replaced or infrastructure.
This is in fact what you do for a living, is it not, Dave?
Yes.
So,
The one I'm an expert on.
So you'd be violating a lot of codes if you put it a direct burial without a conduit. You've got to have conduits, period.
Well, that's why they went to the corners. Now you can cross the road, and if there's a problem, they can just, wherever the junction box is, because you got that, you're gonna have so many junction box. Let me see. Mason Road Extension, when I was working with Chucky, we put that in. We put the utility line was just out on the okay, it was, I'm visualizing what was done. Okay, the sidewalk, the utility line was put in just within a foot of the sidewalk or so. And then you had your junction boxes with the, for electric and telephone and everything. And we ran a, I forgot what size conduit, what grade it was. We ran it across the road and had another junction box so we could run down, because there was houses on both sides. There was something like 30 houses going in on this horseshoe road. And that's how it was done. And that was the way it was engineered. And it worked out good, because this way, if they had to do any fixing or whatever, you know, you don't have to dig up the road. You just go to the junction box, you do your thing and you replace it if you have to. That would be the right way to do it, like Dave said. But I'm, you know,
Dave,
I'm talking
can you
30
see
years
that
ago.
note? Is that what you have in mind? Underground utilities shall be installed using conduit rather than direct burial. Installation
Correct.
of new utilities shall not occur under existing street pavement. Is that what you had in mind?
And that's what I had in mind, that shall not be located under an existing street pavement.
Okay.
Yes, yeah,
You don't want digging up a road.
Gotcha.
yeah, so you're saying put a sub pole down, yeah, yep.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think it needs to be called out. I mean, the price of conduit's $5 a foot right now. So I can see anybody can get cable lines, phone lines and put it in a trench and just do direct buried. It's good it's called out.
Okay. See, we did come up with new comments. New electric, telephone, television cable, and other utility wires shall be installed underground unless the commission determines, based on a written report submitted by the applicant, that such underground installation is inappropriate or unfeasible for all or a part of the subdivision or re-subdivision. In making such a determination, the commission may take into account the types of service existing in the area adjacent to the subdivision, topographic and construction conditions, and the size of the subdivision or re-subdivision. So is that agreeable?
Well, what you-
Yeah.
The only part that gives me a little pause is this based on a written report submitted by the applicant. It's
Yeah,
like
they're
the
out
projected, it's like the projected traffic thing, like anybody can say anything.
Right.
So I kind of like just to strike. I don't think we need to substitute anything in there. New electric, telephone, television, cable, and other utility wires shall be installed underground unless the commission determines
Oh,
that
no.
such underground installation is inappropriate or unfeasible for all or part of a subdivision or re-subdivision.
There is no reason why, there is no logical reason why any utility to be above ground. It can be all below ground.
Yep.
I'm perfectly happy on taking the whole thing out and just always requiring them to be underground.
Underground, period.
Dave, you're the
Yeah.
only person who might have something to say about that, I think.
No, I agree with Alvin. There's no reason why it can't
Okay.
be underground. And that's,
So I think before you strike that out, like, should we keep that for,
yeah, the first part of the sentence,
In-
just
in-
saying that it
Yeah.
should be underground.
Yeah, this will keep and this will go.
but we want to say new electric.
Yeah,
Right. So I think it's a little funny that that isn't the first statement, right? The first line of this should be new electric, television, or telephone, television cable, and other utility wires shall be installed underground, period. That should be the first sentence of this section.
Good point.
yeah, I
And
agree.
then, and then have, unless the
And then
commission,
that other sentence. Yeah.
right.
And then
determine.
underground utilities shall be installed. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that. I know what that note means. Look at that. I love accomplishing things.
Don't.
By the way, my only goal tonight is to get through Z here because subdivision map requirements is a whole new topic.
Don't
So
talk
I'm-
about that one. Let's go to the street lighting. Let's go. Come on, young
Yeah, yeah.
lady. Let's
I'm
go.
just saying. V, street lighting. Road lighting shall be provided if required by the commission at any location where illumination in darkness.
Oh, come on.
Is that a philosophical statement? Is
Poetic.
necessary to minimize the risk of accident involving vehicles or pedestrians, or to assure safe and convenient vehicle and pedestrian passage. In general, when required, the placement of lighting should be limited to intersections. 2, lighting standards and luminaries shall conform to the most current utility company standards unless otherwise approved by the commission. They shall be so located as to safeguard against discomfort, glare, and disability glare, and avoid, how about just glare?
Yeah,
'Cause I don't
so
think
these
that-
things-
It's just glare. And avoid adverse effects from illumination upon the use, enjoyment, and value of adjacent property. Pesky subjective terms. Okay, let's read that through again. Road lighting shall be provided if required by the commission at any location where illumination in darkness is necessary to minimize the risk of accident involving vehicles or pedestrians, or to assure safe and convenient vehicle and pedestrian passage. In general, when required, the placement of lighting should be limited to intersections. Lighting standards and luminaries shall conform to the most current utility company standards unless otherwise approved by the commission. They shall be so located as to safeguard against glare and avoid adverse effects from illumination upon the use and value of adjacent property. Dave Held thought that luminaries was also very funny.
Yeah, so which well-known people are we getting to
To
stand
stand there with
along
lights.
these roads?
Well, the Statue of Liberty, those women who paint themselves as the Statue of Liberty and stand on street corners for tips. That's what we're getting now, luminaries.
Oh, we just eliminate
my-
them.
My slightly less snarky comment is up here, which is that I would clarify that streetlights shall be included always, again, in those same high-density districts. And then, again, to refer to the standards for downcast lighting articulated in the zoning regulations. Which is not to say that I don't think any lighting should be required in the RRAD or LD,
Right.
but again, we might be articulating different standards there for night sky pollution.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, maybe downcast lighting takes care of that.
Does,
It certainly takes care of it to some extent, Alvin, but it might not take care of it entirely for, you know, we get this all the time, right? I didn't move out here to feel like I'm in the city. I want to be able to see the night sky. I want it to be rural, even though we're not really rural. Some people like to think we're rural. Usually different people that complain about being able to hear chickens, but not always.
They mean the rooster.
So Tira, I mean, is it something like road lighting shall be provided where sidewalks are required
yes,
and as necessary to minimize the risk of accident?
Well, let's see how that looks. Should be required, provided.
yeah, strike that out. Jeez.
Keep going.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
Right, period.
I would say, and, yeah, there you go. Okay.
Well, I'm going to make this a new sentence here.
Okay.
I think, well, maybe not. I think I'm going to make it a new sentence. Road lighting shall be provided in any subdivision where sidewalks are required. End sentence. I think that is a sentence. Lighting shall be located. Okay. Road lighting shall be provided in any subdivision where sidewalks are required. Lighting shall be located to minimize the risk of vehicular or pedestrian accidents. In general, when required, although it's always, well, that's fine. The placement of lighting should be limited to intersections. Is this last true, though? I mean, maybe it is. I'm not saying it is or isn't.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but even above that, are we, does this language allow us to require it in places where sidewalks aren't required? I would say road lighting shall be provided in any subdivision where sidewalks are required and where necessary to minimize the risk of.
Whatever this is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Is that the, I'm not saying that is the answer. I'm saying it's an answer.
Yeah.
Road lighting may be required by the commission in subdivisions where sidewalks are not required, but where average daily traffic at intersecting roads exceeds, and I just go back to the appendix and choose whatever that ADT is.
Now, who pays for that lighting?
I was just gonna bring, that was gonna may sound like a dumb comment, but do we want to specify solar lighting or preferred solar lighting? Because the town's gonna pay for the lighting.
Or LED?
Oh yeah, that's an excellent point. So maybe that's just a separate stipulation. Hold on.
Didn't we just talk about that a while back? What with the sidewalks being installed on Main Street where it was brought up with conduit and use solar powered lights, which would be more efficient or not as costly.
Yeah, if this is a town, you know, if they're town's road subdivisions, then the town's gonna absorb that cost for the lighting.
Correct. So solar would be the best thing to be installed. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, I would like to see the developer put the solar lights in if we're going to end up taking it over. So this way, at least in the long run, it's easier to replace solar than it is to go to, you know, all the other stuff tie into the grid.
Yeah, that was Earthy Crunchy Dave's comment. Solar lighting.
I didn't know you had it in you, Dave.
I didn't. I was debating if I made it vocal or not.
Well, Brian brought that up too.
All right, let's read through this again. Road lighting shall be provided in any subdivision where sidewalks are required. Lighting shall be located to minimize the risk of vehicular or pedestrian accidents. In general, when required, the placement of lighting should be limited to intersections. This is still an open question for me, if that's true or not. Road lighting may be required by the commission in subdivisions where sidewalks are not required, but where average daily traffic at intersecting roads exceeds whatever level that happens to be. Lighting standards and luminaires
Take that word out.
shall conform to the most current utility company standards unless otherwise approved by the commission. They shall be so located as to safeguard against glare and avoid of adverse effects from illumination upon the use and value of adjacent property. Lighting required in new subdivisions shall be solar powered. road lighting, I guess, to be consistent with the rest.
Did you call out LED too, or I guess LED
I
does.
didn't, because that still generates costs to the town, right? So if we're just saying up front, you put the solar cell, the little solar collectors on them,
Okay.
or not. I mean, you tell me. You know more about it than I do, Dave.
I don't know the technology. I don't know the, if not solar powered, at least LED
Exactly.
lighting fixtures.
Because the upfront cost on those solar power is extraordinary.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid.
Okay, so fair enough. Are unfeasible.
Should get a comment from Brian, but he wasn't in.
Yeah, I know he could make it tonight.
I know, but I mean, he's the one that pretty much was, with the sidewalk going in on the main drag down here on Route 12, so, his suggestion was put in, because he had the whole thing, the graph and everything he showed us that night about with the solar lights, instead of putting in all that conduit all the way down Route 12 to Route 200.
I hate to be a pedant, but the section
No,
is
you
called
don't.
street lighting, and we just keep saying road lighting over and over again.
Can I tell you, Joe, that I actually already thought of that. I was just gonna fix it in the draft. But fine, Mr. Pedant.
Oh, we get harsh here.
Oh no, it's all we kid because we care.
Can always thank.
Hey,
the
did you
team
ever get
for that.
that? Did you ever get that language game?
I did. I haven't played it yet, but I got it. Yeah,
You have to let me know how that is.
I will.
It looks so fantastic. Okay. So now what about this little sidebar comment? Recommend clarifying that streetlights shall be included in subdivisions in the DMRD, CCDD, and CRD.
We took care of that with sidewalks, right?
Yeah, I think that does take care of it. And then I'll just find some place to appropriately add in to refer to the standards for downcast lighting. Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that.
Moving right along.
Moving right along. Unless anybody else has anything else about lighting. Moving right along.
Not
Fire
unless we put
ponds.
up a strip club.
Well, maybe that's relevant to this topic. I don't know. Fire ponds or water storage tanks. Where deemed necessary by the commission and the town fire marshal, fire ponds of adequate depth and capacity shall be provided in appropriate locations, registered and approved by the fire department. That should probably be the fire marshal, though.
Actually, both.
Oops. Approved by the fire
Vera.
marshal and the town of Thompson Inland Wetlands Commission. Yes, John.
I don't think the fire marshal would really have anything to do with it. It really would be the fire department, because they're the one that are going to be drawing the water out of it. So they probably would almost say, well, we need something that's going to hold 10,000 gallons.
Okay. All right. No, that works
In
for
my
me.
opinion, the fire marshal, I really don't think, I don't know, you would have to, like the fire chief, John and all of them, they're the ones that are going to be drawing the water out of that area, not the fire marshal, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But those fire ponds would be existing. To build a fire pond would require,
Inland wetlands.
well, not only inland wetland, but also the federal government.
Or depth, or deep. The state.
You think the Fed would have to be involved in that?
If
No,
it's
state.
Alvin?
I think the minimum you can build is 200 feet lateral diameter, 200 feet. You get over that, you got to get into the federal government,
Army Corps of Engineers.
Army Corps of Engineers.
The Army Corps. Yes, that makes more sense.
Fire
Um,
ponds really are, on somebody's private property, they've got an existing pond. And, they could dedicate part of that to, the fire marshal or the town inland wetland.
Okay, so that raises two questions about this single sentence stipulation. One is, are fire ponds something that you're really addressing in the standards of design for subdivisions at all? And the second is, this refers to water storage tanks in the title, but has nothing referring to actual water storage tanks.
Correct. I mean, why is it even here?
I'm kind of wondering the same thing. Now, it's not one of the things that, for example, Dave Held called out, and he has called out plenty in this section. So, it didn't strike that particular reviewing engineer as being particularly wacky. But it does seem kind of obsolete.
Well, is it residential and industrial or commercial for a subdivision? So if you had an industrial, say you put 4 Johnson corrugateds in a industrial property, you'd want a water tank there.
Dave's right.
These standards are for both residential and industrial.
Yes, and we don't do a good job of remembering. We have to keep reminding ourselves.
Right.
This may be.
There are a few of those areas in town. I can't remember. I probably drive by 1 or 2 of them, maybe 3, where you see the old pipe with the the hose connection with the it looks like a Z sticking in the ground by a little pond or something. There are quite a few of them around, but when was the last time they were ever used? That's the other thing.
Yeah, Linden's.
Well, that's kind of to Alvin's point, like they're just sort of pre-existing, maybe.
Correct. Trying to remember where I see.
Linden O'Leary, John.
What's that?
Linden O'Leary's got one right on Thompson Road.
Correct. Yeah, thank you. That's one of them, but there are a few more.
Yeah.
I think there was one. I think there off of Wilsonville Road there, Route 12. There used to be one there. I don't know if it's still there.
I can't think of any others. I know the water storage tank up the old Johnson corrugated. Now you got the pallet place that does the pallets, but there's a lot of land up there too. Who knows,
Right.
what the future holds.
Yeah, if you're gonna put in a pond, for the fight of, for water and everything, you're gonna talk a good size, taking up a good sized piece of property too.
I mean, to the best of you guys' knowledge, so let's go into hypothetical land. Let's say now that I'm proposing an industrial park or some other form of commercial development that's got a large campus. Where would because this is not a standard, this isn't describing a standard. Where would the standard for the inclusion of those water storage tanks be? Is that a building code thing? Is it a fire marshal requirement? Both?
Yeah, all of those.
And it's their insurance. Their insurance
There
could
you
require.
go. Yep. That shouldn't be under our jurisdiction or purview.
That's exactly what I was just thinking, John. Is this even within the purview of planning and zoning?
It shouldn't, because the fire department, the fire departments today, the trucks they got, they're holding 10,000 gallons. They got trucks that'll hold 10,000 gallons. And they usually got two of them. So when one's running low, the other one's running down the street, down to Blaine Road over there, put the hose in the river over there, and they'll suck out whatever they need, run back to the fire. Or they got mutual aid that comes in, and everybody's bringing in 10,000 gallons of water. That's a lot of water. Okay, or they'll run a hose right down Route 12, right down to Blaine Road, and start pumping from there right up without moving the trucks. They do that now. They don't go to these places like this anymore. I think we should just take W and throw it out the window, in my opinion.
Let me try something else here.
I don't think it should be under our purview. It shouldn't.
I tend to agree with you, John, but I'm just going to try something here. Hold on a second.
Don't try. Just throw it out. Do as I tell you, young lady. No, I don't know. What do you think, Dave, Alvin? You know,
I agree. It doesn't belong here.
I tend to agree with you guys. I just want to see if, like, this,
What do you think?
if what I'm typing in here might make like a
no, don't do any
making
typing.
people
Just
feel
throw it out.
comfortable, right?
No, don't do any typing. Just throw it out. Get the consensus.
I'll do whatever you guys want.
I think I'm being straightforward and honest. I don't think it belongs here. It doesn't belong under our jurisdiction. That's fire department, inland wetlands, and whatnot. You know what I mean? We're going to tell people, somebody wants to put in. Okay, I'll use Dave as an example. He's got 80 something acres of land that maybe he wants to put in an industrial park or something. We're going to tell him he's got to put in a water tower, and stuff like that. That's to me that I'm just trying to use that as an example.
No, I agree. And I'll give you, and the reason I agree with you and Alvin is because, so I was friends with the guy up at, who owned Johnson Corrugated, and his insurance company, like I said, they came in and made him put up a bigger tank because of the value of the machines that were in there. They wanted to have the water suppression. So it wasn't the town, it was, nothing to do with anyone in the town, but
Right.
they required a bigger water tank. So, how can we spec out what size water tank for what building is there?
Right.
I agree.
Struck. Done. Gone.
Next,
Thank you. Okay, next.
X. Corner markings. Property boundaries shall be marked in accordance with minimum standards for surveys and maps in the state of Connecticut by the Connecticut Association of Land Surveyors Incorporated, latest edition. Seems fairly straightforward.
and costly.
Why?
Question you asked me a while back, Joseph, about corner, pegs and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that in concrete. That's right in there. But they use steel pipe and everything because it's easier.
It's interesting that you bring that up, John, because we deal with monumenting
That's right.
way up here. So we don't need both of those things. They're not saying different things.
Right.
So one or the other. Would we rather call it monumenting or would we rather call it corner markings?
Oh, you went by it. It was right there.
I just stick with the
Monument.
markings and whatever the like our illustrious state statute guy, let's just go with what the state says is appropriate.
This sounds different, right?
This is more complete. This actually specs it out, and
Okay.
this one
Well, that's for
punts it
street.
to
The one above was
punts it to the
800 feet or something. It was for street markings.
Yeah, I think they're different purposes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I'll leave it then. See, this is one of the reasons the stuff needs to be reordered. Things need to be in the flow. I'll ask Janet to just look at without looking at the content, look at the order of them, and in what order would you consider it as you were designing, and we'll lay it out better.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Y, maintenance. The subdivider shall maintain all improvements and provide for snow removal on streets if required until acceptance of said improvements by the town of Thompson. My comment on the side, clarify that these standards are for roads intended for acceptance by the town. Question, how much authority does the PZC have to set standards for maintenance of private roads, shared drives?
Mike Krugel's favorite place.
Hey, what?
Mike Krugel's favorite place.
Yes, it is.
Edison Avenue.
Just wait. That's gonna be a mess.
Everything, what that just says, that guy broke every rule.
So I think that there is more than one sentence that needs to come out of this, right? Like the sentence for town accepted roads or streets and private rights of way. And also, well, no, maybe not there. Applicant shall maintain all improvements and provide for snow removal on streets. So this is for roads proposed for acceptance by the town. The subdivider shall maintain all improvements and provide for snow removal on streets as required until acceptance of said improvements by the town of Thompson. Oops. And then it would be redundant to something earlier in the provisions, but I think given the context, probably appropriate for For roads proposed for acceptance by the town, the subdivider shall maintain all improvements and provide for snow removal on streets as required until acceptance of said improvements by the town of Thompson. For private roads or other private rights of way within the plan, maintenance following construction shall be the responsibility of the homeowners association.
Correct.
Is that clear enough?
I think so.
Because
All right.
we do have there are a few so-called private roads or streets. I know one of them right here in Fabian Quinnebog area where there's four houses on it, and it doesn't say it's not, I don't think it's listed on the street list that the town has. And there's a few others, but I like that. You did a good job on that one.
Okay.
I
And
accept.
Z, stream crossings. All proposed stream crossings shall follow the guidelines established by the stream crossing guidelines, or established in the stream crossing guidelines by the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection, Inland Fisheries Division. Dave Held's comment, he gets the last word tonight. I would suggest removing this entirely. This will be handled through the wetlands permitting process and CT deep if necessary.
Agreed.
So far, we have frequently agreed with his logic. I tend to agree with it here as well.
Strike it.
Strike it.
Kaboom.
Okay.
Look at that.
We are moving and grooving.
Moving and grooving. We got through exactly what I wanted to get through tonight. And
I
with
make a
15
motion.
minutes to go, I do not feel compelled to dive into subdivision map requirements.
Another day. Another night.
day.
Another
So,
night.
I will wait until after the regular meeting next week to doodle you guys again. I will see you all tomorrow night, same bat time, same bat channel, for the regular regulations review of the additional suggested amendments. Before we log off, Dave Poplawski, did you ever look at those shooting range guidelines? I've been waiting with bated breath for your commentary.
I will tomorrow, I promise.
Does that mean you will tomorrow when we're scrolling them up and down the screen?
I'll get you some feedback by the afternoon. How's that?
All right. Actually, don't kill yourself over it, because I have suddenly developed a sort of busy day tomorrow. But if you do send them to me, I will read them, and if I can include them in notes back to whoever shows up for tomorrow night's meeting, then I will do so. Hopefully, all 5 of you gentlemen will be there, Mr. Santos, and as many other PZCers as we can rope in.
Thanks, Tira. Thank you, all of you, for your input and good work tonight. And with that, I will entertain a motion.
You got it.
Second, Hill.
Mr. Lenke moves to adjourn. Mr. Hill seconds. This meeting is adjourned at 8:53 p.m. Thank you all. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.
Good night, everyone.
You guys
too.
are the best.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.